Hey everybody, welcome to 3D6 Charge, a podcast about competitive Warhammer 40k, the state of the game, and community news. We're streaming live right now at twitch.tv/3D6Charge every Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, where you can follow and subscribe. We're also anywhere that you can find podcasts, like on Spotify or iTunes. This is episode 45, chapter approved 2021 Secondaries. I am your host, Chris Vo, and joining me today is Kevin Lieb.
Howdy, howdy.
And Benjamin Rubenstein, Sounds Video.
Hey, everyone.
So, we've got a couple of topics that we want to touch on tonight. Obviously, the main topic for tonight is the new secondaries that came out in Chapter Approved 2021. First, we got a couple of subtopics we want to cover. First one being that Ben and I actually played in a tournament last weekend.
Yeah, it was a great time.
Which was exciting. And then I already forgot the other topic. What was it, Kevin?
Chapter approved point changes and chapter approved in general.
Yeah.
And actually, do we want to touch on the AdMech Menace, given that we certainly had a review of them last time, but I think there's one particular combination that we may have missed that has now become more obvious in the public eye.
If we have time at the end of the show, let's cover that then.
Fair enough.
But yeah, like I said, we played. Ben and I played in a 3-round RTT this past Saturday at a store called Sarge's Comics in New London, Connecticut. Had a pretty good time. Neither of us won, but I wasn't expecting to win. I was expecting to just be win positive, which I guess I was, because I went 1-1-1. I tied my last game. Ben, I believe you went 2-1, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So actually, Ben and I got matched up in round 2, which I was kind of annoyed about because, I drove like 90 minutes to this tournament, and second round is against a guy that I talk to every week about Warhammer anyway, and then my third round was against a guy that, I play against, semi-frequently, as well. So drove 90 minutes to play Warhammer against 2 of my friends.
I got to play the Tau versus Dark Eldar matchup on the Tau side, not once, but 2 times in our 3-round event. I had to play them against round 1 and round 3. Chris, you want to look us a little rundown of your 3 games?
Sure. So I brought Death Guard.
I guess we can go round by round because our second round is actually against each other. So
yeah. So my
talk about your round 1. I'll talk about my round 1.
Yeah. So I brought Death Guard. Real quick overview of my list. It was a bunch of Terminators, 3 tanks, no Mortarian, 10-man blob of Plague Marines, and some Poxwalkers. If you're looking at a non-Mortarian Death Guard list, mine is basically like what you would expect to see. My first round was against AdMech, Forge World Lucius, and this guy was playing with the new codex and everything, but his army hadn't adapted to the new book itself, so he was running I think it was like 850 points of Castellan robots.
That's like what, 7 robots?
He had 6 Daka bots and 2 Punchy bots.
Okay.
Which would have been fine, except entropy cannons on Plague Burst crawlers are like the real deal now. So they kind of just punched through a lot of those Castellan robots and just blew up a shitload of them. And
interesting.
Yeah, and he, you would expect an AdMech player to bring like a bunch of chicken walkers. He didn't have them. Or a bunch of Skitari. He brought 3 minimum-sized squads with the sniper rifles to hold objectives and to take pot shots at characters. Again, old style AdMech. He also brought like a good amount of Cataphren breachers as well. Old style AdMech would have been totally serviceable. In light of the new meta and the new AdMech book, it was a little lacking. So ended up winning that one. Ben, how did your first round go?
My first round, my opponent brought like the Dark Eldar list, although we were playing with the new FAQ, so there's no liquefier racks in it, so that was like a bit of a downgrade there. But we had the Cult of Strife detachment with 2 groups of 5 incubi, Drazar, the Mega Murder Succubus, 2 10-man witch squads, and then a Kabbalite detachment with Kabbalite Trueborns with all the blasters and the dark plants in Cabal of the Black Heart. So it was like the list with I had 6 raiders and a ravager, or no, 5 raiders and a ravager. So it was I was I'm like looking at my talents. I'm like, oh boy. I brought a really murdery talus because at this point, Tau are not good at scoring secondary objectives. So just shoot your opponent off the table, I think is probably where Tau's left at. So I brought 9 broadsides, 6 of them are missile sides, 3 of them have the relic railguns. I brought a Riptide with the relic ion cannon, which is basically just a better version of the relic railguns. I had ATSs on all the missile sides, anti-air targeting systems on both the Riptide and the railgun unit, which made them really good at just popping raiders. And then 2 units of Pathfinders with all of their drones, and a commander with no guns, because every turn I just spent the CP to link him up with the broadside unit so it would reroll all of its wound rolls, because that strategy was incredible. And then I had a CA2021 detachment with an ethereal, the elite Marker Light character and 5 Fire Warriors, just to have some Marker Lights in the list that had rerolls on them. And the CA2021 stratagem did come up once, not in this game though. My opponent looked at my firepower, and we were playing like a corner deployment mission, and he deployed his entire army behind a piece of obscuring terrain in like the absolute backfield corner. So I did this. So I deployed my entire army, touching a back edge, but out in the open, so I could just like see the table. And we ended up having a shooting game, which means that he could never beat me because the firepower of my list is insane. I have 80 indirect fire shots. I think he may not have quite appreciated that because he moved up. He also had like a 9-man jet bike unit, and he moved them up behind obscuring terrain in like the middle of the table. And I just like picked them up because I have literally 80 indirect fire shots with my between my 3 broadside units and my Riptide, and 32 of those are +1 to hit flying models. So even with the -1 to hit strat, I was able to, like, the bikes were just like disappearing. And then both the railguns and the Riptide both just like pick up a raider every time they shoot. So I end up pretty much tabling him, which is, incidentally, when you table your opponent, you tend to score more points than your opponent. So that was my round 1. I think what he needed to do was be a lot less conscious of his losses and just throw his army at me. Because it's one witch squad, right? If one witch squad makes contact, I lose the game. Because I can't fall back from them because they say you can't fall back from them. I can't shoot Overwatch at them because they say you can't shoot Overwatch at them.
How many witches did he have?
That list, I believe, had 2 10s and a 5, as well as a succubus who has the same rule.
Oh yeah, I would have just started like suiciding boats at you just to get one to combat.
Yep. Well, because you can't shoot Overwatch at the witches. You don't even have to suicide the boats. You just be like, 1 CP. You can't shoot Overwatch. Charge.
That's fair.
Of note, my Sept choice for the broadsides was everything that's a missile has an extra armor penetration, and they can shoot Overwatch for each other at 9 inches instead of 6.
Yeah, that AP and that 9 inches hurts a lot. Well, definitely the AP, because even just an additional point of AP, ups how many failed saves that are going to happen.
Yeah, the AP was incredible. The 9-inch Overwatch, in the end, I ended up not liking. I don't think it added that much to my army. The broadside units have such a huge footprint that they end up all being within 6 of each other most of the time anyway. So I think if I was to try this again, I'd probably bring a slightly different list, but we can talk about that later. Let's talk about round 2. Round 2, we played each other.
Yeah, so
we both had like pretty reasonable game ones. We both scored I scored in the 80s. I assume that means you also scored in the 80s.
Yeah, I think you scored 85. I scored 84.
I think I scored 83. I think you outscored me.
Oh, okay. Well, then I scored 84. So
I think I was 83.
Yeah, so we were 1 point off each other, so that we ended up getting paired against each other
just as planned.
And this one probably was like the best possible mission for Ben's, just very shooty towelless because it was the I can't remember the name of the mission, search and destroy. It was the long ways deployment.
Yeah,
So
we were as far away from each other as possible with 3 objectives on each side of the table.
yeah, and I don't know how familiar listeners are with Death Guard, but if you could summarize them in one word, it would be slow. So
yeah. And there's no hiding from my list. There's plenty of it wasn't like a bad terrain. There's plenty of obscuring. There was a fair amount of dense as well. There was actually like almost like a line of dense terrain going down the middle of the table. So anything that was on one side was sort of like had dense in between itself and the thing on the other.
It just really hurts when there's 80 non-line of sight shots coming at you with that additional -1 AP from hardened warheads. Blight Lords and Death Shroud Terminators are mighty tough with T5 and a 2-up armor save, but you throw 80 dice at somebody, they're gonna roll like enough 1s and 2s.
Well, it's not even 1s and 2s. The missiles are AP too. Like you need 4-ups, and you don't get cover, so it's always 4s.
Yeah, so you're just gonna fail saves.
Yeah, so the way Chris in my games went is we both took Well We Stand We Fight. He named his Plague Burst Crawlers. I named my Broadsides. I took Raised Banners. He took was it Engage?
I took Engage, yeah.
And what was your third one? Scramblers. And then I took Banners, Well We Stand We Fight, and Bring It Down, which is not like excellent against Chris. He's only got 7 points in his list, but it's Tau. Like my last secondary is always going to be a little rough. But I ended up tabling him in 4 turns because he just didn't really have the firepower to answer my broadsides to get through the shield drones. And basically every time the Riptide could line up a shot on a Plague Burst Crawler, that Plague Burst Crawler went away because that gun is like hitting on 3s or hitting on 4s, but oftentimes I marker lighted them up, so hitting on 3s, rolling 1s, and then like wounding on 3s, and then every failed save is an average of 5 damage. So 4 damage after disgustingly resilient, and they're only 12 wounds, 14,
12 wounds.
Yeah, so if you fail 3 saves, you die.
Yep.
They're just kind of getting popped.
Yeah, it was an uphill battle from the start, just from the deployment and the type of army that I was up against, and really I was just struggling to just try to stay alive. And again, it wasn't a terrain issue, it wasn't a cover issue. There was plenty of that on the table. It's just that there was no hiding. And when you're playing,
you can't have the outsides.
Yeah, and I imagine maybe like a Custodes army would have had like a similar issue where like, yeah, they're tough and durable, and they can play the objective game. But if Tau throw enough dice at you, you can't play the objective game because you can't hide, and there's nothing left for you to take objectives with.
Yeah, that was a kind of a theme of this whole event. It was like people hiding things behind train. They're just going like, wait, you can just like pick up an entire raider with indirect fire. It's like, yes, I can just pick up a whole raider with indirect fire. I don't need to see it. What's up?
What do you feel like your list doesn't beat?
Oh,
I mean, we're not done with it, but
Drukhari. I don't beat Drukhari. My first round opponent, like remember, this is an event that like this is a lot of people's first 9th edition event. My first round opponent played extraordinarily cagey with his deployment and then got forced to go first, which basically means he's now playing a shooting game against Tau, which you pretty much never want to be doing. But my last round opponent was also playing Cult of Strife. We got a deployment zone where we got the I never remember the names of the deployment zones, but basically we're each deploying across the long edge of the table, so we're like only 24 inches away from each other. And he just like put witches in the center, witches in the left, witches in the right, so it didn't matter where I put my army. And then he spent the CP for auto advancing 8 inches on like the witches that were on the left because I put my army sort of in the middle, and I ended up with too many raiders fulls of witches near my army on turn 2 to like shoot them all out. And by turn 3, he had charged 10 witches into my army, and I've lost the game because they're going to kill like 10 witches can kill 10 shield drones. I only have units of 5 shield drones to avoid blast stuff and coherency issues because drones really need to be able to string out. So 6-man squads are awful. So I don't have a screen that's like enough to like stop 10 witches from just murdering their way through it. So they murder their way through the drones. They touch the broadsides. The broadsides can't fall back because that's how witches work. And I've lost the game because they're just gonna hug me for the rest of the game, and I can't shoot.
So, what prevented you from playing this list before Chikari came out? Like, I know I've talked with you. You've been of the opinion that Tau was bad.
I was probably wrong, honestly. I think I missed my opportunity. This list felt really good. Not that I really missed my opportunity, right? Like COVID, we couldn't really go out and play. It certainly has some issues on missions though. Specifically the mission where there's like 5 objectives and they're all out of your deployment zone. And you have to hold 2, hold 3. I forget the name of it. Is it the Scouring?
The Scouring.
Yeah, I can never play that mission. My whole army needs to be on top of each other. I cannot have anything that's like independent. So I'm oftentimes I'm very rarely looking to like hold 2, hold more. I'm much more interested in trying to shoot my opponent off of their extra objectives and make them score the same number on their primary as me. And usually what's happening is I'm winning in the later parts of the game. I'm spending most of the game behind, and then by turn like 4, my opponent doesn't have enough models left to like actually score points. So like even against this game here, my opponent only had like 19 models left on the table at the end of the game, but he outscored me by like 12 points, and he didn't take the points for being fully painted because he wasn't fully painted. So he beat me by 20, and I did. So basically, he beat me by 22. So like that you lose to getting scored. Like you're not actually getting outshot most of the time. Admech might be able to outshoot me now, but your ability to hold objectives is completely terrible. Any army that can either like tri-point your models pretty easily, or so you're worried about like getting tri-pointed, and you're worried about things that don't let you fall back. And right now with Jakari being a huge part of the meta, like which is literally just a single unit that you just can actually lose the game to. Like I'm not even kidding when I just say like every time there's a boat with witches in it, witches can advance and charge. They get +1 to charge, so it's like 10. They move 7 base. Sometimes they have a drug to move further. So it ends up being like, and they get out 3. So it ends up being like a 30-inch threat range about from a witch squad. So any boat that has a witch squad in it, I can't be within 30 inches of it when I am in my movement phase. Otherwise, I have a real chance of just instantly losing the game. Which means that like a single boat can just like park behind some piece of cover, and I just like have to give up half the objectives on the table. And my models move really slow. So like if I want to get to certain objectives, I just have to like start walking at them at turn 3. And if there's a boat of witches in the way before that, like that's it. I'm sunk. So that's how I lose. It's not just Jakari, right? Like things like White Scars and other very fast melee factions have a pretty reasonable chance against me.
One of the things I find interesting is I listened to Best in Faction, and they recently did a podcast where Colin focused on a Dreadnought heavy Ultramarine list with 2 Invictors that played up, and the entire point was just like as many shots as possible to kill Chikari, and he was tabling all of his opponents too. And like both of these lists have kind of existed. Is it just people were trying to play too cagey for 9th edition, and like maybe the meta was always just supposed to be as much dock as possible, let's kill each other?
I mean, a lot of the meta right now is very finessey lists that are like trying to score a bunch of secondaries, and my list kind of refuses to play on that metric. Like you show up with like a bunch of like 5-man squads, like, oh, I'm gonna go play scramblers and stuff, and like hold these objectives, these like little squads, and like spend these strategies to make myself hard to hit. And I'm just like, I throw about 120 strength 7 attacks a turn, survive, I guess. And it's just like a very different game than most armies are interested in playing, like are used to playing against. It's a very different game than most armies are built to play against. And it's a very different game from what most players are used to playing against. Chris has played against this exact list before, but my other 2 opponents were very clearly a little confused as to how they were supposed to respond to like the ball of broadsides, because they just play so differently from how every other army in 9th is playing right now. You just like kind of move them out to the middle of the table, and like if they can see it, they can kill it. And like,
I mean, in all fairness,
my experience, they can't see it, they might be able to kill it too.
My experience against that type of list didn't help me because I was playing Death Guard back then too, and I had the same issue of, well, you're across the table from me, and I move really slowly, and I can't really get can't really come touch you
Yeah.
or hide from you.
Yeah, and especially now that Monka lets you fall back and shoot. So things like Death Guard are like a lot less. And they have like even fewer tools. Like like the first time you played, we didn't have that. Like if Poxwalkers touch me, I'm like kind of in trouble. Because in 8th edition, you had 0 mistakes with broadsides, and in 9th edition, you get one. Like you get one freebie of like fall back and shoot. Which is huge. It's certainly when the thing I'm fighting is like not witches, like if it's just like incubi or something, as long as my broadsides are like up against terrain or like in some way where they're not going to get wrapped up, I can just like play way more aggressively with them because first of all, charging them is a nightmare, and then whatever does charge them is probably not going to kill them because they're really tough. They got drones behind them, and then next turn they can just fall back and shoot them things to death.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Kevin suggested that perhaps I should cut some because I was thinking of cutting the rail sides for something, and Kevin did suggest a Yavara, with the idea that if you position the Yavara, so the Yavara has to be the thing that your opponent charges. Now they can still turn Overwatch off, but then it gets when it shoots, it's a monster, so it can shoot in combat, and it just shoots a flamer, and it's just gonna melt any witches that are touching it, and then once it melts the witches, then the broadsides are free to shoot.
You have
I kind of like.
Do you have a
I kind of
Yavara?
like that idea. What's up?
You have a Yavara?
I have 2.
Oh, yeah then.
He's a monster.
Yeah.
You're like surprisingly close to play set it. Oh, sorry, that's a magic term. You're surprisingly close to owning as many of a copy of every single tile model as you possibly could to play them in a tournament, right?
I don't have. So only because some of the troop choices go to some really silly numbers. Like I own 30 Kroot. They go to groups of 20. So if there's ever a time where like you're supposed to play 100 Kroot, like I couldn't do that. And then some of the Forge Roll stuff I don't have. Actually, most of the Forge Roll stuff I don't have.
What's a play set of Relentless Rats?
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, I like I don't have hazard suits. I don't have Arvarnas, which are actually kind of interesting right now because they're doing some neat stuff. But I just don't own any. So yeah, that was the tournament. The tournament was a lot of fun. I had a great time.
Did Chris get to talk about his third round?
No, he didn't. I was gonna just make one more comment before I pass it over to him. I'm like particularly I feel like I have to apologize to reviewers a little bit because I've been really down on Tau, and now having played them in that event, I'm like way less down on them. They're still definitely not playing with like the top tier factions in that they just can't outscore them, but they are good enough that I did have a fun time playing with them. And we put the fear of firepower in pretty much everyone we played against, so that was something. Like I felt like I was in every game I played, which was nice.
Yeah, it's always a good spot to be in.
So how did your last round go?
My last round was against a friend of ours, Gil, who has been a Salamanders player forever.
Yeah, we actually went out to breakfast with them before the tournament.
Yes, we did. Actually, I don't know how he did. I think he did pretty well yesterday. So Gil actually did a 3-round RTT on Saturday, and then went to a 4-round RTT on Sunday, so that he could get ready. Yeah, he did. Goodness. He did. And I think he went 3-1. So.
Oh, good for him.
And then this upcoming weekend, he's doing the 40K champs at ACO. So
making up lost time.
A lot of events.
Yep. But my game against him was pretty fun. His Salamanders list, as to be expected, had a shitload of Meltas and multi-Meltas in it, mostly in the form of attack bikes and eradicators, and a couple of like flame aggressors and some plasma scepters. And as somebody who was running, 3 plague burst crawlers and a bunch of terminators, obviously the number one threat to me is going to be those meltaguns. So basically my game plan was actually what was the mission? Scorched Earth? No. Surround and Destroy.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
That's the one with the mission secondary where you have to hold both of your objectives and one of your opponent's objectives.
Yeah, so I didn't do that, but this is the one where like there's basically 6 objectives and they're kind of like in clusters of 3, and having learned a little bit from my first 2 games, I tried to go wide in my game against Ben, and it didn't work out. I went pretty narrow in my first game against Admech and kind of just forced a fight in the middle where I knew I could like trade pretty well against the Dakabots, and that worked out well for me. So when it came to Salamanders, as we were deploying, he was kind of spreading his pieces out, making sure that he had melt or basically anti-tank coverage, everywhere he could. And then, as I saw that developing, I was like, all right, I'm gonna put like a couple of pieces, like a tank and a couple of plague marines in one corner on one objective, and then basically stack everything else on the other side of the table, because this was a hold 1, hold 2, hold more primary. So if I could hold both of mine and then just push up to the middle one at the very least, and then shoot or assault him off of one more, I could score 15 on the primary, at least for one round. Which is what ended up happening. I ended up maxing out the primary. For my secondaries, I ended up taking Scramblers, Engage in All Fronts, and While We Stand, because I'm playing Death Guard and I don't want to interact with my opponent. Which ended up working out pretty well. I ended up taking out like basically all of his Meltabikes, his Eradicators, and his Plasma Scepters didn't really do too much. But what ended up getting me was, I started getting a little thin on coverage just through attrition. And what happened was his one infiltrator guy that was left, he used guerrilla tactics on him and ended up just getting into my backline and just basically snagging a objective away from me so that he could score 5 more points on his primary. And
that's the one where he turns. Sorry, that's the one where he turns off OBSEC, right?
No, that's Rights War.
You pick up a unit and redeploy them.
Yeah, guerrilla tactics is the redeploy.
You're thinking about shock grenades.
Oh, okay. So there was an objective in your backfield that you weren't on, and he like jumped onto it. Yeah,
and like it wouldn't have affected me scoring my primary, but it definitely affected him scoring his.
I see.
So basically, if he wasn't for that, he would have scored 40 on the primary, as opposed to 45. That got him the extra 5 points, which brought us to a combined, both of us to, I think it was 85-85. We like our secondaries, we ended up, doing what we could on them. I missed out on a couple of recon points, again, because Death Guard's slow. But really, it was just... I was expecting the infiltrators to just be finished off. One guy survived, and then he 1 CP guerrilla tactics him into my backline to snag an objective.
All right.
So, I mean, it worked out well for him. And, it was the third round in which we had both taken losses, so like we both knew that we weren't winning the event and we're friends. So it was just basically just a friendly match anyway. But
you guys tied, right?
Yeah, we tied 85-85.
Sweet.
But Gil, if you're listening to this, best of luck next weekend at ACO.
Hey, Gil, good luck.
Hope the practice was good for you. All right, and that
I
was...
actually like where Salamanders are in the... Quick side note, I like where Salamanders are in the meta. I think that the -1 AP is going to be really good against the Vanguard Menace soon to come.
Yeah, and Gil's quite the Salamander player too, so I think he'll be able to maneuver himself to reasonable matchups there.
Yeah, he's not the guy who like has like blue Salamanders this week and then blue Iron Hands next week.
No, he has played Salamanders since they came out, good or bad. He's been putting Salamanders on the table.
Yep. So much respect for the guys who pick a faction and just stick with it. Unlike the rest of us, terrible meta chasers.
Hey man, I played Tau in 9th edition.
Hey.
I'm currently painting Sister, so I am a terrible meta chaser. But
I am
I played
too.
Tau in 9th edition.
I am too. I have 30 possessed that came to my house after they got nerfed because shipping took a while.
I'm the fool who's painting CSM right now.
Yeah, well, they will be meta this.
You're just getting ready for the
summer.
codex.
Will be a big release. All right, let's talk about point changes real quick. The new chapter proof came out. It came up with some new secondary missions, and it came out with some point changes. And by it came out with some point changes, I mean it came out with some point changes if you play a 9th edition codex.
Yeah,
basically.
GW has made it pretty clear that with this particular release that they are only looking to balance the new books and to nerf old books that are too good. Old books that are not good enough can just wait their turn. Because that is where they are allocating their balanced team's resources.
Well, CSM got some buffs in that cultists aren't horribly overpriced anymore. I mean, they still kind of are, but they're back down to 5.
They did some changes that were like super obvious, but not.
They didn't shake up anything.
Like Chaos Space Marine still being 14 points is a joke. Like, look at a Chaos Space Marine, look at a Necron Warrior. What are you doing, GW? Like, Necron Warriors have better shooting, functionally better defensive stats, better buffing characters, better faction traits, better super faction traits, and they're cheaper.
The only thing they really don't have is I do think they do lose out in the mobility aspect baseline due to sorcerers having warp time, and CSM do have some slightly better offensive strats, but their base offense is so weak you have to use like 3 strats to kind of bring them up or above.
Yeah, but if we're bringing in other models, like Warriors can just teleport around the table off of croissants or get dark matter crystals, or like they just have. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like it's a joke that the CSM are more expensive, and because GW doesn't want Chaos Space Marines to be like a horde army. They don't want people to be like 300 Chaos Space Marines. But the way they're currently statted, like the only way they're going to be competitively viable is if you can just bring hundreds of them.
And at that point, I would rather just bring cultists now that they're 5 points a model.
Yes. Yep. And there's Kevin's brick of Chaos Space Marines.
Other
so
points
that
changes.
Being said, go ahead.
Yeah, for other points changes for Tau, I know Tau players are incredibly frustrated with this. I mean, like shield gens went down like 5 points on suits, and hazard suits went down.
Not all suits,
not
just
all
the suits that never take them.
Yes, and then Riptide's going down 1 point, which I think is like, I think Riptide's going down 1 point is worse than Tau not getting any points changes at all, because the 1 point shows that GW did in fact look at the Riptide and look at Tau as a faction, and then decided to do basically just enough to show you that they looked at it.
Yeah, I maintain that Tau are bad in the context of what 9th edition codexes are doing, but they're not so bad that you couldn't bring them to an RTT and win. And they are miserable to play against. I don't think any of my opponents had fun.
Nope.
Yeah, sorry, Chris.
I have not had fun either time I played against that list, just because there's not a lot of interaction. You know, you're kind of just sitting there and just taking it.
Yeah, for you, you're sitting there and taking it, and for everyone else, it's just like, it's like literally, if you can get something I can't fall back from into combat, I lose, and if you can't, you're getting shot off the table. And it's not the most engaging game to play. And I'm the first person to admit this is not the most engaging game to play. Which to me is very disappointing, because I love Tau as an army, but they're not playable in a casual setting, because I don't want to like if you're playing casual games, like you don't want to play against Tau. They're just not fun to play against. So I think GW has made a decision that they're just not gonna make Tau playable until their new codex comes out, and they can just actually rework them to be a more engaging army to play against.
Yeah, I mean, you'd also make the argument that, you know, GW just did not have a lot of data to go off of, at 6 months ago, when they started, and basically when they finalized this and sent it off to print.
Yeah. The thing that annoys me more than anything else is that I am fairly confident GW has decided that certain armies are not fun to play against, and therefore they're going to be bad right now. And I'd be like a little bit more okay with it if they like made a comment about that. Just like, we are really struggling with balancing Tau. We find them to be uninteractive. And like we're struggling with it, and that's why the points just are so wonky right now. And then we're working on 9th edition codex to make them more engaging, like something. But they're just like, maybe if we don't say anything, people won't notice that Tau have a 40% win rate and are getting nerfs.
They're not going to say anything. They're just going to continue promoting the newest and flashiest codex and sculpts.
Yeah.
In the hopes that those Tau players that feel disenfranchised will be like, hey, this is new and shiny. Maybe I'll go play this because I'll have fun playing again.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, they're a company. I get it, but it feels bad.
The whole CA2021 feels bad, but I don't want to get into it too much here because you can hear about it like ad nauseum from the other like 40K content creators.
Yeah. So outside of if you play an 8th edition codex, it was miserable. The changes they made to the 9th edition codexes, I think, were genuinely good.
I agree.
I think that there's some grumbling from the Necron community because they nerfed Catacomb command barges and the las cannon thing from the Chronomancer, but the las cannon staff and the non-las cannon staff having the same point cost was like a joke because you're just never taking the one that's not a las cannon. Sorry, it's a Dark Lance. It's D3 plus 3 damage. And this is the guy who gives 5 of vulnerable saves. He just like also has a Dark Lance. And now the Dark Lance costs 10 points, which, you know what? Characters with Dark Lances should probably cost plus 10 points. Like it's really good. And then the Catacomb command barges went up 10 points because that is the HQ that every single Necron list takes because it's incredible. It's a character with quantum phasic shielding, a huge underslung cannon. He has like incredible invulnerable save, good toughness, a million wounds. You can take Warlord Trits on top of that to make him take less damage. Like the model's just like a little bit too good. And then they took points off of other places. Immortal Teslas are bad. Those are cheaper. They took points off of Doomsday Arcs because Doomsday Arcs were like way overcosted. They went down 20 points. So I actually think it's like pretty aggressive. Like that unit is very good now. I think my favorite change is the Space Marine Apothecary went up. Was it 20 points?
For the Chief
I believe it's
Apothecary,
21.
yeah.
Yeah, because I can't think of the last time I played against a Space Marine list that didn't have that model in it. And
it's an auto take. Even with plus 20 points, I still think it's an auto take.
Yeah. I'm somewhat torn on it. I've heard an argument that like every army has something that it does that's like very powerful, and like somehow the Space Marine one is kind of that apothecary. So it kind of feels weird that that's like going away. Don't get me wrong, I don't think Space Marines are. I don't know. Admech and Jakari. Who knows? But I kind of pushed them out a little bit. But like generically, 6 months ago, I would have said, yeah, the apothecary needs to go up. Nowadays, I'm not so sure like Space Marines needed that nerf.
Yeah, I think I'd rather see that nerf go through than have Admech and Jakari brought down to where Space Marines are than just to see the game sort of spiral up to whatever the heck it is that Jakari and Admech are doing right now.
Right. I'm just saying. I don't feel like Space Marines. I don't know.
I think the issue with him, right, is that you can literally just be like, all right, how many points of models is he standing up every turn? Turn 1, he might not pick something up, but every turn after that, he's going to pick up a model that costs at least 20 points, and it's probably 30. And then he's also going to heal something for like half of its wounds, which is like, well, so he's basically putting 40 points on the table every turn. So if you go second, he's putting 160 points on the table. So like it's almost like until he costs that many points, he's just an auto include. And I don't think he's supposed to be 160 points, but he's like what 110 right now.
I think so.
Because he also gives up the field of pain. He just does so much that like the model's incredible.
He's a great value pick, even with the points nerf.
Like I'm not saying he should have gone up 40 points, but I think if he'd gone up 40 points, we'd still just be seeing him in every list, and that says something. Given where other codexes are and where Space Marines are, I'm glad that he didn't go up 40 points. I think that would have been too much. But yeah, he'll still just see playing every list. But Space Marines will have to cut an intercessor somewhere.
Yeah. I'm happy to see the Inceptor change.
Yes.
They realized that bolters probably did need to suffer for Plasma's sin. So they're down to 40, and then Plasma's up another 5 to 60.
Oof, that is expensive.
Glad I didn't drop the money on a bunch of Plasma Inceptors.
And then I need to shed a tear for the Jump Pack, Storm Shield, Lightning Claw, Vanguard bets.
I did drop money on 10 of those.
Did they go up?
Yeah.
They went up.
I think it was just the point on the storm shields, right?
So I think
No. I forget the exact number, but it was a lot.
So the short version is, if you play 9th edition Codex, the changes they did to it are generally good. If you play an 8th edition Codex, you are going to remain in whatever unbalanced state you currently are until you get your 9th edition Codex. I don't know if it's the best decision, but it's certainly not the worst decision. Like, they are making competent changes to the things they're changing. So there's only so much complaining we can really do.
Yep, until we get to 10th edition, and then this cycle starts anew.
Shall we hop over to the new secondaries, though?
Yeah, so one of the big grumblings about Chapter Approved is that they didn't change any of the missions basically at all. But they did make some significant changes to the secondary objectives that you can take. Most secondaries were just replaced wholesale instead of having tweaks to them, which I think is nice because instead of saying, oh wait, like I'm thinking of the name of one. Linebreaker is different now because like you score, it's a progressive score or whatever. Instead of getting that confusion, they just took Linebreaker out and replaced it entirely with a new thing with a new name, so that there's no confusion between the old secondary and then the quote unquote new rewritten Linebreaker, which is now a different name.
Man, you say that, but we're all going to call them by the old names. It's gonna be
I still call it Recon.
Oh man. You're not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I still call it Recon. But let's go over this by section. So the Battlefield Supremacy section, which is where you would have engage in all fronts, Linebreaker, and Domination.
I believe the only change up here was Linebreaker and Domination got swapped up, right?
Yeah,
yep. Linebreaker is now behind enemy lines.
Yep, and Domination is now Stranglehold. So Linebreaker was formerly, score 4 points at the end of your turn if you have 2 or more units wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. Now, behind enemy lines is you get 2 points for having 1 unit in the enemy deployment, and 4 points if you have 2 or more wholly within enemy deployment. It's a small change. I think it's a nice one because, if for whatever reason you can't quite get wholly within with both the units, you're not going to get completely, have nothing to show for having your ass out in the wind with just 1 unit. It gets you, some points rather than 0 points.
Yeah, granularity in secondaries is good.
Yep.
And
Domination used to be 3 points at the end of your turn if you controlled more than half the objectives. Stranglehold is now 3 points at the end of your turn if you control 3 or more, and also control more than your opponent. Which makes this new Domination way more palatable on the 6 objective missions, because on that, basically before, Domination was only really viable, I felt, on the 5 objective missions because you had to hold 3 because there was only 5. Whereas if it was a 6 objective one, you had to hold 4.
Yeah, now you can hold 3 and then shoot your opponent off of 1, and that's
or just contest 1.
Really exciting for Tau.
Yeah, the Domination was always just like a win more type of secondary. Like if you were scoring Domination, you were already winning. You're just trying to rack up secondary points now.
Well, I don't know if I would always say that. Like, certain factions would try sneaking troop. Like I think Tyranids with Gaunts and Gene Circles. I guess Tyranids by their variety.
Yeah, Space Marines of various sorts, sisters.
Yeah, would just try sneaking some units onto an objective. Like they were never planning on holding it through the turn, but just removing it for a little bit.
Yeah.
Um.
Yep, I've definitely seen Gaunts run 10 Gaunts run 30 inches across the table to hold a center objective and just be like, they're going to die, but here's 3 points.
Yeah, I think Domination being scored at the end of your turn made that possible. If it was one of those start of your command phase ones, then that's never happening. But...
Oh yeah, that'd be awful. All right, next section.
Yeah, next section. No mercy, no respite. That was previously thin their ranks, grind them down, and while we stand. While we stand is gone. It's now to the last. It's basically the same thing as the most updated version of While We Stand. So While We Stand was originally pick the 3 most expensive models, and then I got routed to the 3 most expensive units. And now to the last is the same as the 3 most expensive units, except what happens if that unit like splits into multiple units? Well, now it accounts for that as well.
In that, if I kill either half, you don't get the points. Yes, I know, because it nerfed combat squatting a little bit, it nerfed mech guns, and it nerfed the Unleash the Lions from Custodes.
Yeah. Was it you kill? I thought it was if you kill part of it, you get less points.
Yeah.
No.
So
None?
no. You lose points for losing some of the models in those like combat squads. You only score the full 5 points for that unit if all of those separate units are still on the table. So if you, for sake of example, you have a 10-man intercessor squad that for some reason is one of the 3 most expensive units. You combat squad them into 2 5-mans. If one guy from both of those squads is still alive at the end of the game, then you score this full 5 points. If only one guy or one unit of is alive, could be 5-1, then you still lose some points. You don't score the full 5 points at the end of. I don't know the exact wording of it, but yeah.
Do you not have the? Do either of you have the new book open in front of you?
I refuse to buy the new book because reasons.
That is fair. I do have one on order. I just have to go pick it up.
Yeah, I have the. Unfortunately, it's out in my car. I had to rush here after.
That's because anyway. I was going to ask if either of you knew if this version still carves out the exception for drones.
I don't know.
The old one specifically accepted Tau drones, which was a nerf to Tau drones. But this one, if it has that exception, it'll be a buff to Tau drones.
I can't imagine that they would make that oversight.
No, this would be bad for Tau drones to be included because then the Tau drones die, you lose the points.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, I mean, you can like work around it. You can just like stick the drones on a different unit. It's whatever. All right, next
As
one.
a Deathwatch player, this one kind of saddens me a lot because Deathwatch is always about taking max size squads and then combat squatting them, and this was like a strategy I used with Deathwatch a lot, and now it's worse.
Yeah, it's probably fair that it's worse though, because that was like it felt pretty bad to be like, I have to kill 6 units to stop you from scoring that. My goodness.
Yeah, and like if for some reason you don't finish off, one guy, that one guy can just like hide in a building and I still need to score those points.
Yeah, and like 15 of them could be intercessors with long rifles who are just going to sit in the backfield the entire game.
Yeah. You can
Is this more of a problem than Dark Angel's doing this with 2 Talon Masters and the 10-man Terminator blob?
No.
Okay.
But both can be a problem at the same time.
That's my distraction. It's over there. Don't look at me.
It's like both of these things can be not okay, Kevin.
Let's see. Thin their ranks is now no prisoners.
Yeah, this was way better.
Yeah, this one is way better. So thin their ranks was you tally up 1 per model destroyed, and then 10 tallies for a model with 10 or more wounds, and then you divide by 10, and that's how many points you score. Which, like, if you're going against like a moving carpet type army or like like 128 orc boys, great, cool. If you're going up against like an elite multi-wound army, this is a dumb thing to pick. But now they've changed it to no prisoners, where you're basically tallying up, instead of just per model destroyed, you're doing per wounded, for lack of a better term there. So it makes it much more viable against things like Death Guard, which have a shitload of wounds, or Custodes, which have a shitload of wounds. Like depending on like the calculus, like this might actually be a viable pick against the Custodes or Death Guard army.
I don't think it's going to be for Custodes because, like, Custodians will only put like 60 wounds.
Yeah, they're still paying like 18 points of wounds.
Yeah, it's a good against like Gravis intercessors. Oh, sorry, heavy intercessors.
Yeah,
Or
which are like what 9? No, they're less than that.
they're less than that. It's like 7.
Good
It's like
lord.
no 8. 8.
It's like 8.5. Yeah.
Um.
I mean, even if you're going up against like, let's put it in perspective this way: if you were scoring this against like intercessors, the old way you would have gotten 1 point if you had killed 15 intercessors, like 3 5-man squads. And this new one, because you're counting with the wounds, you would have killed 30 wounds worth of dudes. You get 3 points now.
Yeah, this is basically explicitly to target Space Marines and Space Marine equivalents. I don't think there's really an army other than those that get hit particularly hard by this. You could take it against Custodes, but it would probably be a mistake.
I'm trying to think about. So every 5-man squad is a point. It's pretty close to just get a point per kill or better.
Yeah,
That's pretty good.
Which those secondaries seem to be insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're
Marines,
just
like
thinking, just generally speaking, just like minimum size Space Marine squads. 5 intercessors is a point. 3 eradicators is 9 wounds, which is almost a point.
Yes. So this secondary change, this secondary used to kind of punish combined arms. And now this rewards combined arms because it's harder to take this because it doesn't include vehicles anymore, right? So
no, it does not include no
yeah,
vehicles.
So
no
now your
monsters,
vehicles
no
are not counting towards this. So if you're a Space Marine list and you're like, oh man, I give this up. Like if you can cut a couple squads for some vehicles, well, like now you're just not giving that one up anymore.
Yeah, but then you have to take like a repulsor executioner.
Dreadnoughts. There are very real Space Marine vehicles that are not repulsor executioners.
Yeah, I think if there's an army that gets hit more than other, I think it's Necrons, because Necrons, or actually Silvertide Necrons, because like you literally every game I made guy, you still slew him at one point. So like a 20-man Necron squad, like you kill it effectively 2.5 times. That's
that's not any different, right? Because that's the same as
right.
yesterday.
But now you look at swarms, like the Scarab Swarm. You kill a 9-man Scarab Swarm, that's 3 points.
You're very correct. I wasn't thinking about the Scarab Swarms.
You kill Scorpec Destroyers. You kill like 3, 1 comes back. You kill 3, 1 comes back. You kill 2. All of a sudden, you're looking at 3 points there. Like
yeah, because the classic. The classic Necron list is bringing 27 Scarab bases, and I was not thinking about that. That's like actually 10 points on the secondary.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Nope. You are correct. This hits the Necron list the hardest.
Yeah. It's like good against literally all of their infantry units.
Also, this is the nail in the coffin of Nurglings. Nurglings were already bad, and now they're just like a joke.
Yep.
Yep.
Let's see. Purge the enemy section. Cut off the head. Yeah, that one's just gone. Cut off the head was
Good.
the if you kill the enemy's warlord, depending on what round you kill them in, you got a certain amount of points. This one was bad from the very beginning. Yeah. GW spotted couldn't salvage it.
Got a question for you, Ben.
For me?
Yeah, we have Assassinate and Assassination. Which one was the 2020?
Oh no, is that really what they did?
Yes.
The old one's Assassinate.
Incorrect.
Okay.
Oh no.
No, he's correct.
Sorry, you're correct.
Yeah. The old one's Assassinate, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Man, he was so ready for me to be wrong. All right. So the new one's Assassination, which, if I remember correctly, is just exactly Assassinate, except for the Warlord is worth 1 more point.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, cool. This is a cute change. It doesn't really change anything. If you're going to take Assassinate, that 1 extra point on the Warlord shouldn't change the math on whether or not it was correct to take Assassinate. But sure, I'm glad that your Warlord still means something, I guess. I don't know.
This feels like for all intents and purposes, it's the same secondary, you know.
Cool. Moving on.
I like it, but if it matters, I'm happier with this than the 2 separate.
Look, is it a positive change? Yes. Does it change the secondary and whether or not you should take it? Not really, no. It's the same as
Yeah.
its spin.
The old one was a trap. I've had people take it against me before, and needless to say, they scored 0 points on it every time because you just like don't need to feed them your warlord.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the
Titan
only
Hunter.
time that it was like maybe useful is if you were playing Dark Angels and you could use that secret agenda stratagem to like hide one of your.
Yeah, that's funny. And you go, surprise! I was hunting your warlord all along.
Well, I mean that
hate
worked
this
better.
idea.
That worked better with cut off the head, but I mean, like with either one, yeah.
I don't hate it except for the part where it's still not good. Anyway, next one.
Bring it down. It's the same. It just has the new change, the errata changes in it now.
Cool.
Yep. Titan Hunter. Let's see. You now score 4 points for destroying a Titanic model, rather than 10 points. You get 9 points for killing 2, and you max it out if you destroy 3 or more Titanic models. So this is good because you're just not completely fucking boned if you take a single Titanic model at all now. Because
and it's probably worth mentioning that they also changed
super heavy.
If your warlord is from the same detachment as a super heavy auxiliary detachment, the super heavy auxiliary detachment only costs 1 command point now.
Yeah, which I like a lot because it encourages not souping in like a Knight Castellan, but like if you're playing Imperial Guard, then you can soup. You can bring your factions super heavy, like the Baneblade.
Yeah, which, by the way, every Baneblade went down by 40 points, so I would not be shocked if we start seeing Baneblades again with those 2 changes combined.
Yeah, I would be shocked as well.
Like 40 points is like, it's a lot of points.
Yeah, I love the change to this. It, basically since 9th edition started, unless you're running like a full, like basically a full Knight list, nobody took any Titanic models at all, just because this secondary was a thing, and also list construction paradigms just didn't really support it.
Yeah, this makes splashing a Lord of War way more interesting, because it used to just be like, how many different ways does this screw me over? I'm losing 3 command points. It doesn't get its faction trait. My opponent gets 10 free points. Like all those things are gone. Your opponent's not taking a 4-point secondary, so you're not giving him a secondary from it. And in fact, given that it's so much of your army, you're probably pulling other stuff out of your army that your opponent would be using to score secondaries against you too. It's great.
Yep,
I love it.
If you want to buy a Titan Ravager, now's the time. Get ready for that Chaos Space Marines Codex. Let's see. Shadow Ops. Investigate. Yeah, investigate sites. Is now investigate signal. So they changed this to basically be, you got to be like wholly within 6 inches of the center of the board. And if your opponent wants to disrupt it, they also have to be wholly within 6 inches of the board.
Yeah, this one also got misspoiled on Warhammer Community, so it's unclear what's happening here. Because on Warhammer Community, they claimed what it was going to do was you could do it even if you could start the action if your opponent's within 6 of the center. And if you manage to get them out of 6 inches of the center, you could then complete the action at the end of your turn. And that is not what is printed in the book. What is printed in the book is your opponent has to be wholly within 6 to prevent you from doing the action. Which of these 2 stories is true? Unclear. The guys in the Warhammer Community appear to be very convinced that was the way it was going to be printed, and now it is not. So, I don't know.
I'm unsure how to feel about this one, because it's harder for the enemy to disrupt you from doing it. It's also a shitload harder for you to do it now too, because being wholly within 6 inches is like a tall drink of water for a lot of units, just like physically trying to fit space.
Yeah, so if it's like they said on Warhammer Community, this is going to be something that gets like combined with domination in missions that have an objective middle of the table. And if it's not like they said on Warhammer Community, and it's like the one in the book, I think it's not playable. I still don't think you can take this if your opponent can just like put a thing in the middle of the table and just be like, you can't do it. Like, think about how the Drakari Codex plays. They have so many 5-man squads that can just like move 16 inches. Like, you just can't take this against them. I don't know.
I mean,
Let's talk about the ones that do matter.
If you gotta be wholly within 6 inches, you can just very easily just block somebody out too and make that. I mean, I think this one just comes down to who gets there first.
Yeah, it's just not good. All right, let's talk about the ones that did change to be more
All right.
interesting.
Deploy Scramblers is now retrieve Octarius data. I have no idea what an Octaria is, but basically, the Scramblers is now based on table quarters, and you still got to pick like a non-character infantry unit that does it at the end of your movement phase. If that unit is wholly within a table quarter where you haven't retrieved the data yet, you get points for doing it. Basically, you score 4 points if you get to do it in 2 of the quarters, 8 points for doing it in 3 of the quarters, and then 12 points if you do it in every quarter. So this I like. This goes along with the common themes that we're seeing in that they're moving away from the all or nothing type secondaries and making secondaries in general easier to score, even if it's not the full value of what it was before.
So I think this is both a buff and a nerf. It's a buff in that I think you can almost never fail at getting the 8, but I feel like if your opponent, I feel like it's very hard to get the 12 because I kind of like just the way the game plays. You generally bunch up at least in one of your corners, and so it's very easy to deny that one quarter.
You said
If
8
you're
and
thinking
9, right?
It's 4, 8, and 12.
Is it 4, 8, 12 for 2, 3, and 4 corners?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So when I say this secondary and I see that it's based on quarters now, you're never not getting at least 4 points for this because I'm not whatever. One other thing to note is that your unit has to be 6 inches away from another quarter, so you basically got to be at least 6 inches. Like
You need to be deep into the quarters, huh?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
so the reason I say that you're never not going to score 4 points on this is every deployment zone is at least spanning 2 table quarters, so you could at least plan ahead to get 4 points that way, and then get your plan to get that third quarter in there. But yeah, the cap on this is the theoretical max on this is higher at 12 points, but I think that 12 points is gonna be a stretch. I think that if you score that 12 points, you're already winning. You're just gonna use it to extend your margin of victory and gobble up some more points.
Yeah, outside of 6 of every other quarter means that you're not walking from your deployment zone into another quarter unless your deployment zone is like along an edge that's in 2 quarters. So this just like increases the stock in like 5-man squads that can deep strike even more. And I think we're going to start seeing a really stark distinction between armies that can always take this plus engage in all fronts versus armies that can't really touch those objectives.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's going to be a premium on those types of units. Yeah, I found by round 3 of my of the tournament on Saturday that I found a great use of my Death Guard, my Death Shroud Terminators wasn't to guard my characters because they're bodyguards. No, it's just to deep strike them so that I can score recon and deploy scramblers.
Yep. Yeah, I think we're going to start seeing things like sterilizers and new Sisters Codex Seraphim, like jump back units that can deep strike and have a way of jumping back into deep strike. Just like those units are incredible now because they can score you like one dude can just like score you like 8 points now.
Yeah.
If the Pterodaxi don't get their change made.
Oh my god, it's gonna be so stupid if they can just continuing just.
Yeah, come down, do the action. The action is the end of my turn. All right, pick them back up. Here you go.
And then you can just never interact with them ever.
Yeah. Also, I scored that because it's the end of the turn, so you can say, end of your turn. You can choose the order that things are happening. You score it, and then you pick them up. It's that needs to go away. Even if it does get the nerf, which it should get, which is you can't pick them up on the turn you put them down, it's still incredible. Like they still just like are going to come from behind a building, fly 12 inches across the line, deploy the thing, and then jump into the sky.
No, it's retrieving the thing now.
Sure, whatever. Retrieve the thing, jump into the sky, and then next turn they're going to come down in another corner, retrieve the thing, and like, yeah, now you get to kill them. But like, they've done so much. They've engaged on 2 different fronts. They've retrieved in 2 quarters. It's just so much. They probably, yeah, I don't know.
Basically, if you're playing Admech, by Taraxi.
Yeah, Traxier. I think at least 5 Traxi should be probably in every single list.
Yeah, I think it's just an all-around just great utility unit to have.
Same thing for Seraphim and Sisters.
Yep. Let's see. Teleport Homer is now deploy teleport homers. Basically, it's the same, except now you can do it with bikers.
And you can do it
and as long as you,
away.
yeah, and you can do it from further away. Before you had to be in your deployments, enemy's deployment zone. Now you just have to be wholly within 12 inches of the deployment zone.
And if you're not in their deployment zone, you get 2 points for completing it, and you get 4 if you still do it. You still get more if you do it in wholly within theirs. But
yep. So again, this is going along the same trends that we're seeing, and I like it. Even if
I
they
still
just
think this is terrible.
With Kevin.
If you now that bikers can do it, it's less bad. I think, but even if the secondary in general is terrible, I think it's still moving in the right direction.
Fair enough.
You know,
That is fair. It is still terrible, but it is less terrible than it was before, which is correct.
you know,
Maybe.
and you know what? Ravenwing might get some good use out of this now.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have better secondaries.
They do, but I mean, this still might be a back pocket pick. Let's see. That rounds out shadow operations, and our last section is Warpcraft, which was previously just downright awful and should never be picked unless you're playing Astra Militarum and brought a Astropath.
The FAQ that makes it so that when you cast or when you attempt to do a psychic secondary, all of your casting rules apply, made it a little bit more interesting for a couple other factions too.
Can you remind me what
now
that
if
is?
you're actually good at casting spells, you get rewarded for being so.
So things like Thousand Suns Anger Shamans, which are 12-inch moving casters that can reroll their psychic tests, are just like, all of a sudden, this models are really interesting for psychic secondaries. But yeah, your really powerful casters are like double casting that are giving up their castings is like still not worth it. But some of the other a little bit more expensive single casters became interesting.
Yeah. So Astropaths, Angro Shamans. Abhor the Witch. The changes in the errata have just been made permanent. 3 points for every enemy psycho character you kill. 2 points for every enemy psycho unit you kill. Let's see. Mental interrogation is now psychic interrogation. Let's see. Score 3 points every time you complete the interrogation action, which is a warp charge 4. You can do that anytime you're within 24 inches of any visible enemy characters.
Yeah, so the change in that one is it's more range, but now you have to see them. Because before you could have your psychers hiding in a building, like reading people's minds through walls.
Yep. So this one could be... I mean, I don't know. I feel like this one is like kind of like a push. Yeah, you get like the extra range on it, but now you got to be visible. I
think Anchor Shamans get pretty good at this one.
Yeah, I don't know. I might still be more on the Psychic Ritual.
The Psychic Ritual has to be the same model. So if your opponent gets that model, like, you gotta start the ritual over.
I thought that was what got changed.
No, the change was they confirmed it has to be the same model. They changed it in the bad way because it was a psychic secondary, so it had to be worse.
Are you sure?
Yes.
All right. Well, if it's the same model, then just I don't even want to talk about it because this one's just objectively terrible. Then,
like Kevin was saying, I don't hate Zanger Shaman's doing it because your Zanger Shaman can fly over, do it, and the Armon can be like warp time, move 15 inches backwards.
I feel like it's a waste of warp time, but
sometimes you don't have anything else to do with warp time.
Fair enough.
Depends on the list.
That's fair enough. If you build for it with just warp timing your Zanger Shaman around, you can make it work.
I
I think there's better targets for warp time, but if that's your game plan, just lean into it.
For our listeners, I'm actually fairly convinced that they made it so you don't have to do it with the same model.
With
I'm
the new one.
Yeah, I'm fairly
Okay.
convinced that was the actual change. So I given I do not have the book in front of me, I would say that don't. We'll leave this one up in a wash.
Yeah, the old one was the same character. I don't know about the new one. If the new one is different, that makes it kind of interesting.
Well, for the sake of conversation, what if if it doesn't have to be the same character? You still
It's very interesting.
think it's a lot better now?
Yeah, because also it's progressive, right? It's like first time is 3, second time 6, third time 15, something like that.
3, 7,
Or
and
third
12.
time's 3, 7, 12.
Yep.
3 is awful. 7 is reasonable. 12 is excellent.
I think
Three's like
12 is
yeah.
very much in the realm of possibility. Is like you could get that more often than not. I feel.
I think 12 is not that much of a stretch.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think like you can get that 12 if you're planning for it.
Yeah, the only issue is that this is not one that you can consistently do because 6 inches to the center is also known as within deny the witch range of your opponent's entire army, which makes the other one a little bit more interesting, the 24-inch one from another character, because unless your opponent has positioned all of their psychers to be in between you and the rest of their characters, you can pretty much always get one of your psychers in a position to like mind drain one of their characters without getting someone else getting in the way. Whereas this one, you have to fly into the teeth of your opponent's psychic defense.
I think if you're running a psychic heavy army and you come up against a table with terrain that's amenable to this, and you're up against, I don't know, like Black Templars or World Eaters or Drukhari or some other army that has no psychers, I think this one is a very real pick.
You can't do it against Black Templars or World Eaters because they can deny it with the deny strat. Like they can just actually spend command points to take victory points off of you.
Oh shit, you're right. Against Drukhari though.
Yeah, it's like just Drukhari intel, which makes it super niche. So generally speaking, if you're building an army to do psychic secondaries, I think you're planning on mental interrogation, which is fine. Mental interrogation is good.
I wouldn't rule out this one though. This one it's not your first option, but I think it's a very strong option in specific circumstances. Which is,
what was it, Kevin?
I'm just gonna say, if you have like let's say your opponent has like 1 deny the witch, it's gonna be very powerful to use it here, but like there's a chance that like it might mean like your other powers that are like you low cast just sneak by because they're trying to deny this. Like
That is fair.
Yeah, they might be trying to deny you like 4 victory points, but they spent their deny on that, and now they can't deny your warp time or whatever.
Yes, that is worth mentioning. If you are running a psychic army and you plan on doing a psychic secondary, it should probably be the last power you cast in every psychic phase because you want to make sure your opponent is just like out of denies, or they have to like think about letting powers go, and that way even if you fail the test, it still has had the value of your opponent's been holding a deny for it. Because if you do it first and you fail the test, like not only have you failed the test, but also your opponent like knows they don't have to save a deny for it. Also, trying not to do it with casters who can fail the test. Like, do it with people who can reroll or who get bonuses. Because you can't CP reroll it, unlike a normal psychic test.
Yeah, I mean, granted, it's warp charge 3, but that means that you still can't. You have a 1 in 36 chance of failing it.
Yep, the ritual's 3, the interrogation's 4.
All right, that covers all of the new secondaries in chapter per 2021. As a whole, how do you guys feel about just the secondary changes?
Great.
I'm glad there was some update. I think these are both good and healthy changes, but like even if they weren't going to be quote unquote better secondaries, I think you needed to make some changes in this book. The fact that the missions didn't get changed, it would have been really ugly if it was like essentially like let's say they only changed 2 secondaries. I think I'd be very upset with this book.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that the secondaries they changed are in the right direction. They took a lot of the really bad ones and made them more interesting. They made them better, and they took a lot of the ones that were like all or nothing and put some granularity in there so that It's no longer like, oh, you missed your third scramblers, you lose the game. Just like, actually, you can't win.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of that change of moving away from the all or nothing type of secondaries.
Yeah, I at the tournament, I literally denied scramblers on 2 people. 2 of my first Chris and my first round opponent were both unable to deploy scramblers, and it just like it felt and like it's like not only am I getting a bunch of points, they've also like spent some amount of effort getting scramblers into other zones, and like now that effort was just like getting units killed for no reason.
Basically, yeah, because against like a gunline army, whenever you're trying to deploy scramblers, oftentimes you're basically just running dudes out into the open, having them throw scramblers down, and then getting shot to pieces.
So yes, while this makes my army worse, I think it's great. I think this is good for the game.
Agreed. But didn't we have something that we wanted to tack on to the very end here, Ben?
AdMech.
Just a quick thing on AdMech, which is specifically the Lucius Vanguard bomb. We did mention Vanguards. We did mention the Vanguard bomb with they have the stratagem where Vanguards auto wound on 4 pluses to hit, and Vanguards have 3 attacks and at 18 inches, and they go up to 24 dudes in the squad. So this
20.
is 30, huh?
20.
It's 24. It's 20.
Sorry, did I say 24?
Yep.
Yeah.
My goodness. All right, 20 dudes in the squad. 4 pluses to hit are still in my mind, apparently. So 20 dudes in the squad. This is 30 auto hits. Oh, sorry, 30 auto wounds. They have a character that can make them AP1, which you're gonna do most of the time. It's also importantly boosts them up to 24 inches.
Mm-hmm.
So this is 30 auto wounding AP1 1 damage attacks against anything that's not a vehicle. This takes 10 wounds off of Mortarion. This kills 20 Necron Warriors in 1 shot. This kills basically any number of Space Marines that you pointed at. This picks up 2/3 of a broadside unit. And this unit costs 160 points.
It's gonna cost. So
Sorry, it's gonna cost 170.
170 for any of the Skitarii Warlord traits affects them at global range, and ignore light cover, which is very important.
Yep, because they're going to ignore cover light cover as well. And then on top of that, the Lucius faction trait is they get +1 saves against 1 damage weapons. The Lucian Warlord trait is pick a unit with a 9 or that has that piece of war gear, lets you ignore the limits. It ignores wound rolls of 1, 2s, and 3s, so they're transhuman. They're toughness 3 transhuman, which is like absurd. And then there's another trait for ignore AP1 and 2, and there's another trait for you always kind of cover. And all of a sudden, they have 2-up saves, transhuman physiology, ignore AP1 and 2, and there's 20 of them. There is no shooting unit in the game that like reasonably deals with this unit because no one's like throwing AP3 shots at that volume, and AP1 and 2 shots are getting 2-up saves made against them unless it's multi-damage. And if it's multi-damage, there's 20 of them, so are you really making enough attacks? Like even autocannons, which like or like everyone's just like bring as many autocannons as you can to like blow away Drakari. They make 3-up saves against autocannons. They make 2-up saves against autocannons for 1 turn of the game where they use the defensive Doctrina. And 1 squad of them can teleport once per game.
It's kind of disgusting, really.
And you can just like play 80 of them in a list, and that's not even like half the list.
And the buffing characters, and it's not.
Yeah, Kevin and I were messing around with AdMech lists, and I'm like, you bring 4 priests and 80 dudes. And he's like, 80 dudes sound like a lot. Should we go down to 60 so we can fit some tanks? And I'm like, we have 1,100 points to spend with the 80 dudes.
It wasn't that 80 dudes costs a lot. It was that like I'm not actually convinced the extra 20 is adding value at that point in Lucius.
Right. And then we're like, all right, what's the other thing you can fit? Well, we can also fit 15 chicken walkers. So you can be like 15 chicken walkers, 10 of them shooty, 5 of them melee, 80 dudes. Which I still think it's correct. 80 is correct. Kevin thinks it's 60. Whatever. Either of those numbers is stupid. They completely flood the table. They have an unbelievable damage output, and they're extraordinarily tanky. And I think it may have been missed.
Generically, if you're hyper specialized in killing something, like hyper specialized, you can achieve the 1 ratio, meaning your point cost in what you're killing is you get your point cost in what you're killing. This is often something you have to get like a melee unit to do because melee has the extra difficulty of actually getting there. Very rarely do you see a 1 ratio in shooting. Generally, this is like that's an issue when that happens because it means like your opponent can never trade favorably with it. This unit against a lot of units just trades up and then almost doesn't even get trade back. Like one of the silly things about it is um it does this thing even if it doesn't get any of the defensive buffs and your opponent just kills it, you're often going up in points there too.
Yeah,
And like
like
points traded.
yeah. So like I said, 20. So they cost 170 points for this unit. They pick up 20 Necron Warriors, which is 260 points every time. They pick up 10 wounds off of Mortarion, which is like 300-ish points. They can kill 2 broadsides, which is like 250 points. They just always trade up. And then their defensive profile is such that basically the only thing that hurts them is AP3 melee weapons. And it is challenging to remove 20 models with AP3 melee weapons. It's basically like Plague Marine swords?
Power fists.
Blade Guard veterans.
Blade Guard vets don't have enough attacks. Like Blade Guard vets are going to kill like what, 5 of them? They're transhuman.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't really know what the answer is there.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things where it's a little silly how much you can stack on top of them and just have them be this unbelievable brick. That are OBSEC too. So like if they're on an objective, it's theirs.
Yeah. That being said, not all hope is lost. We must once again switch up our meta. Or kind of go in a direction that like Drakari was already pushing people. Mecha. Because their 4+ to hit to 4+ hits cause wound strats does not work against vehicles. So, like a Necron list that vehicle heavy Necron list is going to be very good against them because like you lose a lot of that efficiency. I think
Yes.
like a Salamander's Dreadnought heavy list, or Salamanders in general, because we're talking about getting AP1, but Salamanders ignore AP1.
And then Salamanders also have a strat for +1 saves against 1 damage weapons. So like even like generic Salamander infantry are just making 2 up armor saves against this blob.
Yep.
So it's not all hope is lost. Like there are certainly counters to it for the offense, but I still don't think Salamanders have like the offense back to like do anything to the squad. That being said, the Salamanders can just like murder all the other ones, the unbuffed ones that are on the table, which does like a fair amount, but you're still seeding like some amount of the table to just like 20 OBSEC models, which is real good. So we'll see where it goes. Maybe the meta shakes out in a way where it's fine. And it turns out if you run this sort of list, everything else can kind of just end up falling apart. But maybe we're gonna have to. I think at the very least, their offensive ability needs to get toned way down because even if it just turns out like all the defense stacking doesn't matter because you can just go off different parts of the list, the offense of this unit is kind of just unacceptable right now.
Because once again, so Lucius can deep strike things. They pop in, they kill something above their weight class. Your opponent does a lot of shooting to shoot, shooting power to kill them down. But they still trade it up. Rinse and repeat this over a few turns, and you're just kind of winning.
Yep.
Well,
And
very efficient chicken walker shooting happens
all right.
to you.
And on that happy note, that is everything I had to say on our topics. How about you guys?
All good for me. Kevin?
I can't wait till 2 years when broadsides crush you again, Chris. It'll be a joyous day.
Just make it a biannual match.
Yes.
Oh man, I do hope to see you guys at some more local tournaments soon. So we can certainly talk about them because I did greatly enjoy playing.
I did too, and I've been, just trawling BCP and just steadily just increasing the mile range of events. Just trying to find something.
Let me know if you find any, because I'll certainly join you out there. Or don't, and then you can dodge my route sets.
It's true. All right. So thank you, everybody, for listening to this week's show. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to thank our contributors for this episode, Kevin Lieb and Benjamin Rubenstein. This has been the 3D6 Charge podcast. Bye for now. Don't roll any ones.